Yo friends, I'm at the middle school garden and food forest project that I've been doing some volunteer work with for a couple years now, and I want to give you a quick tour of what it looks like here now in the first week in January, and I have some pretty interesting updates from this past year. Just a quick overview. There's about a 1 acre section that's fenced in here, and I've been working primarily here, about a 20-foot wide, maybe 30-foot wide, and 150-foot long section. We started putting plants in the ground 2 years ago, so everything here is pretty young. Production has been pretty low so far. As to be expected, it takes perennials a couple years to get going. I really expect that next year we'll really start to get some fun stuff to share with the middle school kiddos. Despite it being still pretty new and young, we were still able to get some nice stuff to share. The most productive and useful element so far in this forest garden has been these strawberry plants. We harvested a good couple quarts of strawberries, and they are come ready like the last week of the kids' school year, so they're able to partake in them as well. Plus, everywhere the strawberries grew, which about doubles in size every year, has been almost completely weed-free, or at least very easy to manage. On this property, I've really only seen one weed that has caused me some concern, and it's been thistle. This area just gets a ton of thistle, to the point where it's almost too much work to hand weed everything, and I kind of have to go through with a weed whacker just to stay on top of it and prevent it from sowing more seeds. So here's my really interesting update for the year. This year was just too busy for me. I really didn't make it up to the middle school garden almost at all. I think maybe I came a handful of times to do some really quick weed whacking just to stay on top of the thistle. In the very beginning of the season, I was able to come by like maybe January, February and spread a whole bunch of mulch. I took a lot of the mulch from the path and I dumped that onto the beds, and then I re-mulched the paths with fresh mulch. Other than that, in the summer, in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, I almost wasn't here at all. On top of that, we had an absolutely terrible drought. I think almost 30 days of summer weather, 70, 80, 90 degrees, sunny, 30 days, no rain at all. So we're talking about the worst possible conditions for traditional gardening. And yet, everything here is alive. Not everything was thrived throughout the year, but everything lived, and I think has a really good chance of thriving next year with the tiniest bit of care and maintenance. I attribute a lot of it to the deep mulch. There's about 6 to 12 inches of mulch almost everywhere, and everything survived. I put a few brand new, really young things in right before the drought. I watered them a little bit and then just never made it back. And even one of those survived. One of the honeyberries I put in. I'm really impressed. So again, another great reason, I keep talking about it on this channel, another great reason to use thick mulch wherever and whenever you can. Let's take a look at the plants and see what happened this year. Like I said, the strawberries just did really great. They don't look like much now, but they were fantastic all year long. This here is a young pawpaw tree, probably put on maybe 6 inches of the growth, even in the midst of the drought and me not caring for it. These two elderberries, here and there, I put stakes in the ground. It was probably this sticking out of the ground and an equal amount in the ground. I put that in the ground 2 years ago, and look at the growth it has already. I think this one big elderberry in particular, I think by next year, maybe the following year, it will be at full maturity. So just a few years from a stake I shoved in the ground and didn't do anything with, turned into a large, healthy, productive tree. These berries and flowers are loved by pollinators, and the berries are loved by birds. I guess not all of these were eaten. And they're also loved by humans for their medicinal attributes. You find a lot of elderberry supplements in like your CVS because they're great for boosting your immune system. I have 2 different rosemary plants here. This one, I believe, was from my old property. The transplant, even with all the drought and everything, they did great. Now rosemary is not as big a surprise here. They really like the drier, warmer conditions, but these 2 really just put on a ton of growth, really handled the summer well, and have so far been handling the colder winter temperatures well as well. I have some thyme here as a ground cover intermingled with the strawberries, and just the largest sage bush. So happy, so healthy and productive. I have a couple different lavender bushes scattered throughout the property. The kids really, really love those. They're great for adding to the flowers that the kids pick every year. In other sections of the garden, they grow cut flowers to sell as fundraiser opportunities. This is a pear tree. Again, I didn't water, I didn't care for it, I didn't fertilize. This all here is new growth. So it put on a foot of new growth on a number of different branches in a year of absolute neglect. There's another pawpaw tree hiding back there with the yellow tag. Not much growth this year. It's going into its third year, and I think it's going to really shoot up in the spring. This was the very first year we started to get some figs off of this. They didn't ripen in time, but I think next year this fig tree will be productive enough to share with the kiddos at the very start of their school year. This here is an apple tree. I think the graft died soon after planting it 2 years ago, and this is the rootstock sending up new shoots. So I'm going to have to get some scion wood in the spring and graft some new varieties onto this. I have a couple different goji berry bushes on the property. I didn't get a chance to come in this year and taste the berries. Goji berry plants I got for my property just taste like trash. So I'm kind of hoping these taste better and I can propagate from these because, inedible, the ones at my house. In this section are some young plants that I brought from my old property and transplanted them here so that I could eventually, this time of year, transplant them to the new property. Here is a columnar apple tree. It's going to get a little taller than this, but not any bushier. It's supposed to go tall and straight with apples running up and down its side. This is its first product of the year. I haven't even tried it. I don't really think it's ready or it ripened fully, but maybe next year. I have a couple different grapevines here. This is just a stick. I had to trim off of my own grapevine. I shoved it in the ground and completely forgot about it. A summer with a bad drought, no watering, no fertilizing, no caring for it at all, and it is now a strong and healthy plant that I could dig up and sell to somebody. It's like that healthy and that strong of a plant. So now we have grapes. I'll probably move it to the edge of the garden along the fence so we can have grapevines growing along the fence. The hazelnuts here are just starting to produce what I think are their first catkins. I've not seen catkins from these hazelnuts before. This Chojuro pear tree really needs to be pruned, but wow, it's probably 8 foot tall now after just 2 years. This is a gooseberry plant. They are multi-stem shrubs, so a lot of different branches coming up from the ground like this, and I covered those branches in wood chips. Yeah, it's a little too frozen to pull them back today, but when I pulled them back like a few weeks ago or a couple months ago probably, I saw that each one of those branches that were under the wood chips started to grow their own root system. So this is one gooseberry plant that I could dig up and easily divide up into 5 or 6 different plants and spread it throughout the garden in little holes where there aren't anything growing. Here's an apple tree. This graft, one of these I think is the graft and one of these is the rootstock. I just don't know which is which. It's really hard to tell. So I'm probably going to let it go. I think this year it'll start to produce apples, and then I'll have a really clear indicator which of the apples are from the rootstock, small, not tasty, which of the apples are from the graft, larger and tastier. So then I'll just prune off the one, and I have one main stem going. The Yostaberry plant made it through. Again, no watering, no mulching, no weeding, no fertilizing. This is big and strong and put on some new growth this year. The red Fuji apple tree is looking really great, about 8 foot tall right now. Probably is going to produce a nice big crop, nice medium crop of apples next year. Down here along the edge of the row, I planted a long row of rhubarb, who have all died back for the season, but they have nice big leaves that will shade out this grass as it tries to encroach into the bed. Yeah, I'm fully aware that some of these trees desperately need to be pruned, that some of these plants definitely did not grow as well as they would have if I had watered them, if I had taken care of them a little bit more, or at all, frankly. And yet I am stunned at how much things grew, or even just how they survived through a really, really terrible year with no care whatsoever. I'm really excited about the future potential of this area. I think as these trees get older and more mature and more established, they'll be even easier to get through times of drought. Got a few cherries off of this little guy this year. And this guy produced like one peach or one nectarine. It's kind of a multi grafted together. It didn't really grow very much this year, but we'll see what it does next year with some actual care. And this here is a row of asparagus, not really for the kids, but I think they look really pretty. They make a nice end row here. This rest of this stuff here is grass, but I want to mulch it and I want to plant into it. So they make a very nice end of the row, preventing more weeds from encroaching in on the main bed area. And I've interplanted in amongst this asparagus strawberry plants. I don't see any right now. I'll have to see if they come back in the spring. Here's an example here. This is a strawberry plant I started as a young little baby in the spring. I put a whole bunch in here and a bunch died, I think. But I think enough survived to continue to add to the ground cover. I want this whole area to be surrounded with strawberries as a ground cover as well. Up along the fence I have some like blackberry canes, and in that corner there's a grapevine, and way down there in that corner there's a grapevine. I think my goal for next year is to have the kids help me finish mulching this area here and plant some more into it, and then just find little spaces where there aren't really things growing and plug cuttings or plug young plants into those spaces. Other than that, I really just want to stay on top of the weeds. I think using a weed whacker to stay on top of the thistle is probably just the only real way to go. It's just too much work otherwise. But I think if I have a couple years of staying on top of the thistle, with a deep mulch, with the trees starting to provide some shade, with stopping the thistle from spreading their seeds, I think I could really cut down on how much weeding is needed here. I hope you were inspired to mulch heavily on your own properties and to plant perennials. They are way hardier. If I had tomatoes here, if I had squash here, and I completely ignored it all year with no mulch, I don't think I would have gotten anything out of it at all. I think they would have just died. But these perennials, they survived and some of them thrived. So best of luck to you this winter as you plan for your spring plantings. See you around, friends.